For 5 years, a man lived next door to us in a house identical to ours. Beige vinyl siding, black shutters, a lawn mowed every Saturday morning at 8 sharp. His name was Daniel Marsh, and my daughter hated him from the moment he moved in. I never understood why. Claire was 28 when Marsh arrived, already married to Tyler for 3 years, living in their own place across town. She didn't live next door, she didn't see him every day, but every time she visited, every Sunday dinner, every holiday gathering, she'd glance out our kitchen window toward his house and her jaw would tighten. "Something's off about him," she'd say. "Off how?" I'd ask. "I don't know, just off." My wife, Helen, would look at me across the table, her eyes saying what her mouth wouldn't. Leave it alone, so I did. For a while. Marsh kept to himself. He worked from home, some kind of consulting business that kept his car in the driveway most days. He'd wave if you waved first. He'd nod if you nodded. He never initiated conversation, but he never avoided it either. Once, his garbage cans blew over in a storm, and I helped him right them. He thanked me. We talked about the weather. That was it. Normal. Painfully, unremarkably normal. But Claire saw something else, or thought she did. Tyler started coming with her to our Sunday dinners about 6 months after Marsh moved in. Tyler, who worked in corporate security for a logistics company and never let anyone forget it. Tyler, who had opinions about perimeter defense and threat assessment and situational awareness. Tyler, who looked at Marsh's house the same way Claire did, but with a vocabulary for it. "No security cameras," Tyler said one afternoon, standing at our back window with his arms crossed. "No motion lights, no visible alarm system." "Maybe he doesn't need one," I said. "Everyone needs one, especially someone living alone. Maybe he likes his privacy." Tyler turned to look at me. He had this way of tilting his head, like he was calculating whether you were naive or just stupid. "Privacy and security aren't mutually exclusive, David." David, not Dad. Never Dad. We'd been over this before, early in the marriage. He wanted to establish boundaries, he said, maintain appropriate professional distance in family relationships. Helen thought it was weird. I thought it was a warning sign. Claire thought we were being dramatic. "He's just respectful," she'd said. "You should try it sometime." That stung more than it should have. The fence started going up in late September, year 3 of Marsh's residency. Not around Tyler and Claire's property. They didn't live here. Around ours. Well, half of ours. The side that bordered Marsh's lot. Tyler handled the permits, Tyler hired the contractors, Tyler paid for the materials. 10 feet high, solid cedar panels, no gaps, no windows, professionally installed with concrete footings that went down 3 feet. It went up in 4 days, cutting our backyard in half, blocking the eastern light from Helen's garden, turning our morning coffee on the patio into a view of expensive wood grain. "It's for your safety," Claire said when I asked why. "Safety from what?" "From him." "Marsh? What's he done?" "It's not what he's done, Dad. It's what he could do." "Based on what?" She looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at her. They had this thing they did, this silent communication that shut everyone else out. Then Tyler spoke. "We've done research, background checks, public records. There are gaps in his employment history, inconsistencies in his residential timeline, red flags that suggest he's hiding something." "Hiding what?" "That's the problem. We don't know. But the pattern is consistent with someone in witness protection, or someone avoiding legal scrutiny, or someone with a history they don't want discovered." I stared at him. "You ran a background check on our neighbor?" "I ran a background check on someone living 15 feet from your bedroom window. Someone whose past doesn't add up. Someone whose behavior suggests operational security training. He mows his lawn on Saturdays. At exactly 8 a.m. every week. Same route, same pattern. That's not habit, that's discipline." Helen set her coffee mug down hard enough to splash. "You're saying he's dangerous because he's punctual?" "I'm saying he's dangerous because he's too controlled, too consistent, too aware of his surroundings. I've watched him. He does counter-surveillance checks when he gets his mail. He varies his grocery shopping times. He parks in different spots. These aren't normal behaviors." "Maybe he's careful," I said. "Careful people lock their doors. Paranoid people check if they're being followed. There's a difference?" The fence went up anyway. Marsh didn't complain, didn't comment, didn't seem to care. He just kept mowing his lawn on Saturdays at 8 a.m., kept getting his mail with whatever checks Tyler thought he was doing, kept living his quiet, isolated, apparently threatening life. I started paying attention after that. Not because I believed Tyler, but because I wanted to prove him wrong. I watched Marsh the way Tyler claimed to watch him, looking for these red flags, these operational security patterns, these signs of hidden danger. I saw nothing. I saw a man who lived alone and worked from home and minded his own business. I saw someone who pulled weeds from his flower beds and put his garbage cans out on Tuesday nights and brought them back in on Wednesday mornings. I saw someone who got deliveries from Amazon and wore reading glasses when he checked his mail and once spent 20 minutes trying to start a lawnmower that wouldn't turn over. I saw a neighbor, but Claire and Tyler saw something else, and that something else started spreading. Helen noticed it first. We were at a neighborhood barbecue, the kind of forced social gathering that suburban life requires, and she pulled me aside near the coolers. "Linda Kowalski just asked me if we felt safe," she said. "Safe from what?" She didn't say, but she kept glancing at Marsh's house. "Claire. Has to be." It was. Over the next few months, the story metastasized. Marsh wasn't just a quiet neighbor anymore. He was a quiet neighbor with a past, with secrets, with red flags. The specifics changed depending on who was telling it. Witness protection, corporate espionage, some vague connection to organized crime. But the core remained. Something was wrong with the man next door, and you should be careful. People started avoiding him. Not obviously, not overtly, just small shifts in behavior, conversations that stopped when he approached, waves that didn't come back, invitations that went to everyone on the block except him. I watched it happen and said nothing. What could I say? That my daughter and son-in-law were spreading rumors based on the fact that a man was too organized? That Tyler's professional paranoia had infected the neighborhood? That we'd built a 10-foot fence because someone waved in a way that made us uncomfortable? Helen wasn't as silent. "This is wrong," she said one night, after another dinner where Claire had mentioned Marsh's concerning behavior patterns to her mother. "I know. We should say something." "Like what?" "Like the truth. That we've lived next to him for 4 years and he's never done anything remotely threatening. They won't believe us. They're your daughter and son-in-law. Exactly, they won't believe us." Helen went quiet. The kind of quiet that meant she was thinking, processing, planning. She'd been doing that more often lately, these silences that felt like strategy forming. "Tyler's wrong," she said finally. "I know. Not just wrong, dangerously wrong. I know that too. So what are we going to do about it?" I didn't have an answer. Not then. The 5th year was the hardest. The fence had weathered to a dull gray. The neighborhood had settled into its new normal, where Marsh existed on the periphery, acknowledged but not included, present but not welcome. Claire and Tyler's visits became less frequent. When they did come, Claire wouldn't stay long. She'd make excuses, cite commitments, find reasons to leave before dessert. "She's anxious," Tyler explained once. "Being this close to him triggers her stress response." "He's lived here 5 years," I said. "If he was going to do something, wouldn't he have done it by now?" Tyler gave me that head tilt again. "Predators are patient, David. That's what makes them dangerous." I bit back what I wanted to say. That the only predator I could see was sitting in my living room, drinking my coffee, poisoning my daughter's mind with tactical jargon and paranoid fantasies. But I said nothing. Helen said nothing. We watched and we waited, and we wondered how far this would go. The answer came on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was drinking coffee on the patio, the narrow strip of patio that remained after the fence, when I heard the ambulance. Not speeding, not urgent, slow and steady, the way they drive when there's no emergency anymore, when they're just there to collect and document and move on. It stopped at Marsh's house. I walked to the fence. 10 feet of cedar blocked my view, but I could hear voices, radio chatter, the hydraulic whine of a stretcher being raised. No shouting, no panic, just procedure. Helen came out, still in her robe. "What happened?" "I don't know. Ambulance next door." We waited. 20 minutes later, they brought him out. I couldn't see him through the fence, but I could hear the wheels on concrete, the click of locks engaging, the doors closing with that hollow thump that ambulances have. They didn't use their sirens when they left. I called the non-emergency number. The dispatcher was polite but firm. No information could be released. I tried the hospital. Same answer. I knocked on doors up and down the street. No one knew anything. No one had seen anything. No one seemed particularly concerned. Except me. I waited 3 days before I called again. This time, a different dispatcher, a woman with a tired voice, told me what I already suspected. "Mr. Marsh passed away at Community General on October 23rd at 4:17 p.m. No next of kin listed. No further information available." "What was the cause?" "I can't release that information, sir." "Was it suspicious?" A pause. No, sir. Natural causes. I'm sorry for your loss. She hung up before I could tell her it wasn't my loss, that I barely knew him, that I'd been a terrible neighbor who'd watched while my daughter turned him into a ghost. Helen cried when I told her. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears while she sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. We should have done something, she said. What could we have done? Anything, something. We should have invited him over. We should have talked to him. We should have been better. He seemed fine. He died alone, David, in a house where no one wanted him. How is that fine? I didn't have an answer. Claire called that evening, not to ask about Marsh, not to offer condolences or express regret, to ask if we'd heard about the situation next door and whether we'd had any interactions with him in his final days that might raise concerns. I know. Tyler saw the obituary. We're just making sure you're okay. We're fine. Did he ever give you anything? Letters, packages, requests? No. Did he ever mention family, friends, associations? Claire, what are you doing? A pause. Tyler's voice in the background, muffled but urgent. Then Claire again. We're just being thorough, Dad. Making sure there aren't any loose ends. Loose ends? He died. Alone. With no one who cared enough to be there. What kind of loose ends are you worried about? You don't know what you don't know. That's the whole problem. Just, if anyone contacts you about him, let us know, okay? Who would contact us? Just anyone. Lawyers, investigators, journalists, anyone asking questions. She hung up before I could ask why. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday morning at Riverside Chapel, a small funeral home on the edge of town that handled the cases no one else wanted. Unclaimed bodies, people who died alone. Helen and I drove there in silence. The parking lot was nearly empty, just the hearse, a maintenance van, and our car. Inside, the viewing room was smaller than our living room, with folding chairs arranged in neat rows that no one would sit in. The casket was closed. Simple pine, no flowers, no photographs, no sign that anyone had ever loved Daniel Marsh or been loved by him. The funeral director stood near the door, a thin man with kind eyes and practiced sympathy. Are you family? Neighbors, I said. He nodded, like that explained something. I'm afraid you might be the only attendees. We waited, but it's fine. There will be a brief service, just a few words. We sat in the front row because it seemed wrong to sit in back. The funeral director read from a generic script, the kind they use when no one knows the deceased well enough to write anything personal. He was born, he lived, he died, may he rest in peace. It took 6 minutes. Afterward, as we were standing to leave, a man approached from the back of the room. 50s, gray suit, leather briefcase. He moved with the careful precision of someone used to being watched. Mr. and Mrs. Morris? We turned. Helen's hand found mine. I'm Robert Chen. I was Mr. Marsh's attorney. We didn't know he had an attorney, Helen said. Most people didn't know much about Mr. Marsh. That was by design. He glanced toward the funeral director, who was tactfully examining something in the hallway. Could we speak privately? There's a conference room. We followed him. The room was small, windowless, smelling of old coffee and furniture polish. Chen closed the door and opened his briefcase. Mr. Marsh left specific instructions regarding his estate. Very specific. Most of it is being handled through standard channels, but there was one request that required personal attention. He pulled out an envelope. Not business-sized. Larger, thicker, the kind you use for formal correspondence. My name was written on the front in careful handwriting. He asked that this be delivered to you personally, by hand, after his funeral. He was quite insistent about the timing. I took the envelope. It was heavier than I expected. What is this? I don't know. He didn't tell me, and I didn't ask. Attorney-client privilege extended to his right to privacy in personal matters. Chen checked his watch. I have another appointment. If you have questions after reading that, my card is inside. He left without another word. Helen stared at the envelope like it might explode. Open it. Maybe we should wait until we get home. David, open it. I did. Inside was a letter, handwritten on heavy paper, and a smaller sealed envelope marked, "Second letter, read after you've decided." I unfolded the first letter. The handwriting was precise, controlled, the kind you develop when you're used to writing reports that matter. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. I read the letter twice in that conference room before I could speak. Helen stood beside me, reading over my shoulder, her breath coming faster as she processed the words. The letter was 3 pages long, dense, detailed, devastating. My name is Daniel Marsh, it began. But that's not the name I was born with. I won't tell you my original identity. It doesn't matter now, and it would only put you at risk if certain people came asking. What matters is what I did before I became Daniel Marsh, and why I ended up living next door to you. He'd been a logistics specialist, he said. Crisis management for corporations dealing with supply chain disruptions, security failures, internal investigations, the kind of work that put you in rooms where bad people discussed bad things and assumed you were either too stupid or too complicit to care. He'd cared. He'd documented everything: names, dates, shipments that didn't match manifests, payments that didn't match invoices, warehouses that existed on paper but not in reality. 3 years of careful, quiet evidence gathering. Then he'd made copies, secured them with lawyers and journalists and federal investigators, and walked away. I wasn't a hero, the letter said. I wasn't trying to save the world. I was trying to save myself. The people I worked for weren't the kind who let you quit. They were the kind who made sure you disappeared. So I disappeared first, on my terms, with insurance they couldn't ignore. The company had collapsed 6 months after he left. Federal indictments, asset seizures, executives in handcuffs. He'd watched it on the news from a hotel room in Montana, drinking cheap whiskey and waiting to see if anyone would come for him anyway. No one did. The insurance held. So he built a new life. New name, new city, new patterns. He found your suburb, he said, because it was exactly the kind of place where quiet men could disappear into the background noise of mortgages and lawn care and neighborhood watch meetings. I thought I'd be safe, the letter continued. I thought I'd done enough, been careful enough, distant enough, and I was, from the people I was afraid of. But I wasn't safe from your daughter and her husband. This was where my hands started shaking. I noticed them noticing me about 6 months after I moved in. Not you, not your wife, them. They'd drive by slowly when they visited, watching my house, looking for, I don't know what. Patterns, I suppose. Proof that I was whatever they'd decided I was. I considered moving, starting over again. But I was tired, Mr. Morris. Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being alone. So I stayed, and I watched them watch me, and I documented everything, the same way I'd documented everything before. He'd kept records. Dates, times, descriptions of every conversation he'd overheard, every rumor that spread, every shift in neighborhood attitude. He'd recorded the license plate numbers of cars that parked across the street at odd hours. He'd photographed the surveying crew that came before the fence went up. He'd saved every piece of mail that was delivered to his address by mistake or opened and resealed. I'm not paranoid, he wrote. I'm experienced. And experience taught me that when someone starts building a narrative around you, you need to understand why. So I investigated. The same way I used to investigate shipping discrepancies and accounting irregularities, by following the money and the motivation. Tyler, he discovered, had worked for the same logistics company. Not in the same office, not in the same division, but there, on the security side, for 8 months right before the indictments came down. He left before the collapse, Marsh wrote. Clean exit, good recommendations, no hint of involvement. But he would have known. Security always knows. They're the ones who protect the people at the top by making sure the people at the bottom don't talk. I think your son-in-law recognized me, not my face. I've changed enough that facial recognition would be unreliable. But something. The way I move, the way I work, the operational habits that are hard to break. Whatever it was, it triggered him. And instead of confronting me directly, instead of asking questions, he decided to neutralize me socially. That's what the fence was about. Not protection, containment. He turned me into a threat, so people would isolate me, avoid me, treat me like something dangerous that needed to be kept at a distance. It's the same tactic we used in corporate security when we needed someone gone but couldn't fire them. Make them uncomfortable, make them alone, make them leave on their own. But I didn't leave, and that made me more dangerous in his mind. Not because I was actually dangerous, but because I was unpredictable. I wasn't following the script. The letter continued for another page, detailing Tyler's patterns. The times he'd driven by at night, the weekend he'd visited but spent 2 hours walking the neighborhood, talking to people, spreading concern. The way he'd positioned himself at community events, always visible, always engaged, always planting seeds. Your daughter, Marsh wrote, is a victim in this. I don't think she knows what her husband is. I think she believes the story he's told her, that I'm dangerous, that I'm hiding something, that protecting you requires isolating me. She's not cruel, she's been manipulated. You need to know this. I never intended to tell you any of this. I was going to take it to my grave, let you live in whatever peace you could find. But 3 months ago, My doctor told me I had 6 months. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable. And I realized I couldn't let your son-in-law win. Not because of what he did to me, I've survived worse, but because of what he's doing to your family. He's poisoning it. The same way he poisoned this neighborhood against me, he's teaching your daughter to see threats where there are none, to justify cruelty as protection, to believe that isolating people is the same as keeping them safe. And eventually, Mr. Morris, that poison will turn inward, toward you, toward your wife, toward anyone who questions his narrative. So I'm telling you now, while I still can, not for revenge, not for justice, but because you came to my funeral, because you were kind when kindness cost you nothing and earned you less, because you're the kind of person who deserves to know when someone is lying to you. The letter ended with instructions. The second envelope contains documentation. Everything I gathered about Tyler's employment history, his activities in your neighborhood, the timeline of rumors he spread. It's not proof of crime. There's no crime here, just cruelty. But it's proof of intent. And sometimes that's enough. What you do with this information is your choice. You can burn it. You can ignore it. You can confront him or stay silent. I'm not here to tell you how to handle your family. I'm just here to tell you the truth I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Thank you for being at my funeral. Thank you for being the kind of neighbor I wanted to have. I'm sorry I couldn't be a better neighbor to you. It was signed simply, Daniel Marsh. Helen's hand gripped my shoulder hard enough to hurt. Oh my God. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope. The second envelope sat there, sealed, waiting. We need to read it, Helen said. Not here. David, not here. We walked out of the funeral home in silence. The parking lot was empty now, just our car sitting under gray October sky. I got behind the wheel and sat there, engine off, staring at the envelope in my lap. Tell me he's wrong, Helen said. Tell me Tyler didn't do this. I can't. Tell me Claire doesn't know. I don't think she does. Then we have to tell her. Tell her what? That our son-in-law is the kind of person who builds fences around innocent people? Yes, exactly that. I started the car. Let me think. Think about what? About what happens when we tell her, about whether she'll believe us, about whether Tyler will let her believe us. Helen went quiet. The kind of quiet that used to mean acceptance but now meant planning. We drove home without speaking. The fence was there, 10 feet of weathered cedar, blocking the view of Marsh's empty house. No cars in his driveway, no lights in his windows, just emptiness where a person used to be. Inside, I spread the contents of both envelopes across our dining room table. The second envelope contained copies, photocopied documents, printed emails, screenshots, Tyler's employment record at Vertex Logistics, the company Marsh had brought down, his transition to his current employer 2 weeks after the federal raids began, a letter of recommendation from a VP who would be indicted 6 months later. There were photographs. Tyler's car parked outside Marsh's house at odd hours. Tyler talking to neighbors, the body language clear even in still images, leaning in, confiding, creating intimacy. Tyler examining the fence line before it was built, walking the property with a contractor, pointing at sight lines. There were transcripts. Not recordings, Marsh had been careful about that, but notes, time-stamped and detailed, of conversations he'd overheard. Tyler telling Linda Kowalski that Marsh had concerning behavioral patterns. Tyler mentioning to Mark Peterson that people like that don't just end up in neighborhoods like this. Tyler suggesting to the HOA president that increased vigilance might be appropriate. And there was a timeline. 5 years, month by month, showing the spread of suspicion like an infection map. Each rumor documented, each conversation noted, each shift in neighborhood attitude tracked. It was thorough. It was damning. It was completely useless. There's no crime here, I said. He destroyed someone's life. He hurt someone's feelings. He spread rumors. He built a fence. None of that is illegal. So we do nothing? I didn't say that. Helen gathered the papers together, aligning the edges with sharp, angry movements. Then what do we do? I looked at the timeline again, looked at the dates, the patterns, the careful escalation. We do what Marsh did, I said. We document everything. Documentation didn't save him. No, but it did something else. What? I tapped the letter. It gave us a choice. Over the next week, I read everything twice more. I made my own timeline, cross-referencing Marsh's notes with my memories. The dinner where Claire first mentioned Marsh's odd behavior, 2 weeks after Tyler's car had appeared in Marsh's driveway photos at 2 a.m. The fence proposal, 1 month after Tyler had spent a weekend visiting, but actually canvassing the neighborhood. The increased anxiety in Claire directly correlated with Tyler's increased presence. Helen watched me work with the kind of intensity she used to bring to her own work before she retired. She'd been a project manager for a construction company, used to tracking dependencies and identifying bottlenecks. Now she applied those skills to this. He isolated Marsh first, she said, pointing at the timeline, before he started the rumors. Made sure Marsh had no allies, no relationship strong enough to defend him. Then he made Marsh the story instead of the storyteller. And then he convinced our daughter she was in danger. Why? Helen looked at me. Because if Claire believes she's in danger, she'll believe Tyler is protecting her. And if she believes that, she'll never question him. That's not marriage. That's control. I know. We sat there, surrounded by evidence of manipulation, wondering what parents do when they realize their daughter is married to someone dangerous. Not physically dangerous, socially dangerous, psychologically dangerous. The kind of person who could make a neighborhood turn against an innocent man and feel righteous doing it. We need to talk to Claire, Helen said finally. She won't believe us. We have to try. And when Tyler finds out we tried? Then we deal with Tyler. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Anger. Cold, focused, strategic anger. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that Tyler spent 5 years teaching this neighborhood to fear Daniel Marsh. Maybe it's time they learned who they should actually be afraid of. Helen lay beside me, awake but silent. I could tell by her breathing. Do you think he was scared? She asked finally. Marsh? When he died, do you think he was scared? I think he was tired. That's worse. She was right. Fear you can fight. Exhaustion just wears you down until you stop caring whether you win or lose. We're going to fix this, I said. How? I don't know yet, but we're going to fix this. Helen reached over, found my hand in the dark. Tyler's not going to just let us. I know. This could get ugly. I know that too. Claire might not forgive us. I didn't answer that, couldn't, because I didn't know if there was a version of this where we saved our daughter from her husband without losing her in the process. But I knew we had to try. The letter had given us a choice. Burn it or use it. Stay silent or speak truth. Let Tyler win or fight back. Daniel Marsh had spent 5 years being isolated, suspected, turned into a story instead of a person. And then he died alone, with nothing but a letter and a prayer that someone would care enough to read it. I'd read it. Now I had to decide what to do about it. I fell asleep sometime after 3. Helen's hand still in mine, both of us holding on like we were afraid of what would happen when we let go. I made the call from a burner phone we'd bought at a convenience store 2 towns over. Paid cash, wore sunglasses, felt ridiculous and necessary at the same time. The security line at Tyler's company rang 4 times before someone answered. Cortex Security, this is Davidson. I need to report a potential data breach. I kept my voice flat, professional. This is regarding employee file access. Can I have your name and department? I'd prefer to remain anonymous, but I work in HR and I've noticed unusual access patterns in our employee database. Files being opened at odd hours. Information being copied that doesn't match normal business needs. A pause. Keyboard clicking. Can you be more specific about which files? Personnel records, medical information, background checks. The access logs show activity between midnight and 4 a.m. on multiple occasions over the past 6 months. That's outside normal business hours for HR. More clicking. I'm going to transfer you to our internal security team. Please hold. The hold music was generic corporate jazz. I waited, watching Helen and Claire through the kitchen window. They were planning what to take, what to leave, what mattered enough to risk going back for. This is Tyler Morrison. You reported a potential breach? My stomach dropped. Of course he'd taken the call. This was his department, his responsibility. I almost hung up, almost threw the phone away and called the whole thing off. But then I thought about Marsh's empty funeral, and I kept talking. Yes, I work in HR. I've noticed unusual access to employee files. When did you first notice this? About 2 weeks ago. But looking back through the logs, it's been happening for months. And you're certain this access wasn't authorized? No one should be accessing medical records and background checks at 3 a.m. That's not normal protocol. Tyler was quiet. I could hear him thinking, calculating, deciding how to handle this. I need to investigate this immediately, he said finally. Can you meet me at the office? I'll need you to walk me through what you found. I'd rather remain anonymous. I understand. But if this is a genuine security breach, I need details. Specific file names, access timestamps, user IDs. I can't investigate effectively without that information. Check the logs yourself. System admin level access. Multiple files, late night activity. That could be a dozen different people. Then you should probably figure out which one. I hung up. Helen was watching me through the window. I gave her a thumbs up. 10 minutes later, Claire's phone rang. Tyler. Don't answer, I said. He'll know something's wrong. Let him know. She let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times in the next 20 minutes, left increasingly frustrated messages. I need to go into the office, emergency, call me back. I want to make sure you're okay. There's a situation at work. Might be there for a while. We should talk when I get back. Claire, pick up. Please. I'm worried about you. Each message a little more desperate, a little more controlling. He's going, Claire said after the 4th call. He has to. His entire job is threat assessment and security. He can't ignore a report like that. We waited another hour to be sure. Then we drove to Claire's house, their house, Helen driving, me in the passenger seat, Claire in the back looking like she was heading to a funeral. Tyler's car was gone. We parked in the driveway. Claire used her key. The house was quiet, neat, exactly as unsettling as you'd expect from someone who documented everyone's lives but lived in aggressive normalcy. 30 minutes, I said. In and out. Claire nodded and headed upstairs. Helen and I stood guard, watching the street, jumping at every car that passed. I could hear Claire moving around above us. Drawers opening, closet doors sliding, the sound of someone dismantling a life one piece at a time. Helen's hand found mine. This feels wrong. It is wrong. It's also necessary. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No, they're not. 15 minutes in, Claire came down with 2 large suitcases and a laptop bag. That's everything I need immediately. I can get the rest later with a police escort if necessary. Good, let's go. We were loading the car when Tyler's sedan turned onto the street. Shit, Claire breathed. Stay calm, I said. You live here. You have every right to get your things. He's going to be angry. Let him be angry. Tyler pulled into the driveway behind our car, blocking us in. Got out slowly, deliberately, his face carved from stone. Going somewhere? He asked Claire. Getting my things? Without telling me. You were at work. I got a call about a security breach. Anonymous tip. Funny thing is, when I checked the logs, there was nothing there. No unusual access, no late-night file views, no breach at all. Maybe they got it wrong, I said. Tyler looked at me for the first time. Maybe. Or maybe someone made a false report to get me out of the house so my wife could rob me. I'm not robbing you, Claire said. I'm taking my own belongings. After going through my private files, after violating my workspace, those rantings had documentation. So do I. Tyler pulled out his phone. Photographs of you in my office, timestamps showing when you were there, evidence that you broke into my private space and stole confidential information. It's our house. There's no breaking in. It's my office. Locked. Private. You had no right. You had no right to spy on my parents, on our neighbors, on Marsh. Tyler's jaw tightened. I did my job. I protected my family. And now you're going to what? Leave me? Divorce me? Destroy everything we built together because you believe a conspiracy theory? It's not a conspiracy theory when there's evidence. Evidence? You have some photos and a letter from a disturbed man who died alone because no one could stand being around him. That's not evidence. That's manipulation. Then show me your evidence, Claire said. Show me proof that Marsh was dangerous. Show me why you needed to destroy him. I don't owe you proof. I owe you protection, and I provided it, for years, while you were too naive to recognize the threats around us. Helen stepped forward. Move your car. Tyler looked at her. Excuse me? Move your car. You're blocking us in. This is my house, my driveway. I'll move when I'm ready. No, you'll move now, or I'll call the police and tell them you're illegally detaining us. Detaining you? You're free to go. Just leave my wife here. Your wife asked us to help her get her belongings. She's coming with us. Tyler turned to Claire. Is that what you want? To leave with them? To throw away 8 years of marriage because you found some files and got scared? I'm not scared of the files, Claire said quietly. I'm scared of you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Tyler's face did something complicated. Anger and hurt and calculation all fighting for dominance. I never hurt you. Not physically. Then what? What did I do that was so terrible? You made me see danger everywhere. You made me hate an innocent man. You made me question my own instincts every time they disagreed with yours. You made me small. I made you safe. No, you made me controlled. Tyler looked at her for a long moment. Then he got in his car, backed out of the driveway, and drove away without another word. We stood there in the sudden silence, watching his taillights disappear. That was easier than I expected, Helen said. Too easy, I agreed. Claire was shaking. He's not done. He's just regrouping. Then we regroup too. We loaded the last suitcase and drove back to our house. No one talked. We were all thinking the same thing. This was just the beginning. Tyler would come back. He'd have a strategy. He'd make moves we couldn't anticipate. Because that's what he did. That's what he was. And we just declared war on someone who treated relationships like tactical operations. Back home, we unloaded Claire's things into her old room. She looked at the space like she was seeing it for the first time. I haven't lived here in 10 years, she said. It's still your room, Helen said. It's always been your room. I'm 36 years old, and I'm moving back in with my parents because I married the wrong person. You're 36 years old, and you're leaving a situation that was hurting you, I said. That's not failure. That's survival. She sat on the bed, the same bed she'd slept in as a teenager. What happens now? Now we make sure you stay safe while you figure out what you want to do next. And Tyler? We deal with Tyler. How? I thought about Marsh's files, about the 5 years of documentation he'd compiled. We finish what Marsh started, I said. Helen looked at me sharply. Meaning? Meaning Tyler thinks he's won because he controlled the story about Marsh. He thinks he can control the story about Claire leaving too. He thinks no one will believe us over him. So? So we make sure everyone knows the truth. About Marsh, about the surveillance, about what kind of person Tyler really is. That's revenge, Helen said. No. Revenge would be destroying him. This is just making sure he can't destroy anyone else. Claire looked between us. He'll fight back. Let him. Dad, you don't know what he's capable of. I thought about those files again, about the strategic plans for neutralizing obstacles, about the careful, calculated way Tyler approached every relationship. Neither does he, I said. Because Tyler Morrison had spent years treating people like surveillance targets, but he'd never had someone treat him the same way. And that was about to change. We spent the next week being careful. Claire stayed inside mostly, working remotely, avoiding places where Tyler might find her. Helen and I kept our routines normal. Grocery store, morning walks, nothing that would suggest we were planning anything. But we were planning everything. Tyler called every day, sometimes twice a day, left voicemails that cycled through emotions like a broken machine, apologetic, angry, confused, desperate, cold. Claire didn't answer. Didn't listen to most of them. Just let them stack up like evidence. He came by the house 3 times, once during the day, once in the evening, once at midnight. Each time, Helen met him at the door and told him Claire didn't want to see him. Each time, he stood on our porch looking like he was calculating whether to push past her. He never did. Too smart for that. Too aware of consequences. But I saw it in his eyes. That calculation. That weighing of options. That evaluation of whether the temporary satisfaction was worth the long-term cost. He's planning something, Claire said after the midnight visit. I know. Something big. Probably. We should be ready. We are. But I wasn't sure that was true. On the 8th day, Tyler played his hand. I got a call from Linda Kowalski, the neighbor 2 houses down. She sounded uncomfortable. David, I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over? What's this about? I'd rather discuss it in person. Linda's house smelled like cinnamon and anxiety. She offered coffee I didn't want and sat across from me, wringing her hands. Tyler came by yesterday, she said finally. Asked if we'd noticed anything unusual about your behavior lately. Unusual how? He said Claire moved back in with you, said she's been having some kind of episode, mental health crisis. He's worried about her safety and yours. I set down the coffee mug. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe. He seemed genuinely concerned. Said Claire's been acting paranoid, making accusations, building conspiracy theories about him. Did he mention what kind of accusations? Something about him spying on people? I didn't really understand it, but he said she's been going through his things, taking photos, building some kind of case against him. He thinks she might be having a breakdown. And he wants you to what? Watch us? Report back? Linda looked uncomfortable. He asked if I'd keep an eye on your house. Let him know if I see anything concerning. He's worried Claire might hurt herself. or that you and Helen might not realize how serious her condition is. Her condition? That's what he called it. I stood up. Linda, my daughter isn't having a breakdown. She's leaving her husband. That's not a mental health crisis. That's a marriage ending. Tyler said you'd say that. Said Claire's convinced you to take her side, that she's very good at manipulating people when she's in this state. This state? That's what he said. I wanted to tell Linda about the files, about the surveillance, about Marsh and the fence and everything Tyler had done, but I could see in her eyes that she'd already chosen who to believe. Tyler had gotten there first. Thank you for telling me, I said instead. I'm not taking sides. I just thought you should know what he's saying. I appreciate that. But I didn't. Not really. Because Linda had just told me that Tyler was executing exactly the playbook I should have expected. Discredit Claire, isolate us. Make everyone think the problem was her instability rather than his cruelty. It was efficient. It was effective. It was exactly what he'd done to Marsh. When I got home, Helen and Claire were waiting. Tyler's telling people you're mentally ill, I said to Claire. She didn't look surprised. I wondered when he'd start that. You knew he'd do this? It's what he does. When he can't control the situation, he controls the story. Make me look unstable, and everything I say about him becomes questionable. So what do? We let him. I stared at her. What? We let him spread that story. Let people believe I'm having a breakdown. Let them think you and Mom are enabling me. That doesn't make sense? It makes perfect sense, because while everyone's focused on my supposed mental health crisis, they're not focused on what Tyler's actually done. And eventually, when we show them the truth, the contrast will be more effective. Helen sat down heavily. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan that works against someone like Tyler. You can't fight him head on. You have to let him overextend, overcommit, build a story that's too elaborate to maintain. And what if the story sticks? What if everyone believes you're unstable? Then I'll have to live with that, but at least Tyler won't be able to hurt anyone else. I looked at my daughter and saw someone I didn't fully recognize. Someone harder, more strategic, more willing to sacrifice immediate comfort for long-term victory. She'd learned from Tyler, and now she was going to use those lessons against him. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler's campaign intensified. More neighbors got visits, more concerned conversations about Claire's well-being, more suggestions that we should get her professional help. Mark Peterson mentioned it at the hardware store. Heard Claire's going through a rough time. Susan Chen brought it up during Helen's book club. If you need recommendations for therapists, I know some good ones. Even the mailman asked if everything was okay. Your son-in-law mentioned there's been some family stress. Each time, Helen and I played our parts. Concerned parents, a little defensive, but ultimately grateful for the community's support. We never confirmed Tyler's story. Never denied it either. Just let the ambiguity hang there. Let people draw their own conclusions. And people, being people, concluded what made the most sense to them. That Tyler was a devoted husband dealing with a difficult situation, and we were well-meaning, but perhaps enabling our daughter's problems. It was working exactly as Claire predicted. But it hurt. I hate this, Helen said one night. I hate that people think our daughter is unstable. It's temporary, I said. What if it's not? What if this is what people remember about her? Then we make sure they remember something else? Like what? The truth. But I was starting to wonder if the truth mattered. Tyler had spent years proving that you didn't need truth. You just needed to control what people believed, and he was very, very good at that. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Daniel Marsh's lawyer. Robert Chen called on a Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Morris, do you have time to meet? About what? Additional materials from Mr. Marsh's estate, things he wanted you to have but couldn't include in the initial letter. What kind of materials? I'd prefer to discuss in person. My office at 4? Chen's office was downtown, a small suite in an old building with good parking and expensive furniture. He met me in the lobby, led me to a conference room, closed the door. Mr. Marsh left several thumb drives in his safety deposit box, Chen said without preamble. I've reviewed the contents. They contain extensive documentation of your son-in-law's activities, surveillance photos, audio recordings, digital forensics. Some of it is concerning. Show me. He plugged the first drive into his laptop, opened a folder labeled Tyler Morrison, Pattern Analysis. The files were organized by date, hundreds of them. Photos of Tyler watching Marsh's house, audio recordings of Tyler talking to neighbors, digital captures of Tyler's social media activity, online searches, forum posts. Mr. Marsh was thorough, Chen said. He documented everything. Is any of this illegal? The recordings might be, depending on consent laws, but as evidence of behavior patterns, it's compelling. Can we use it? Use it for what? To prove Tyler manipulated this neighborhood against Marsh. Chen closed the laptop. That's not a legal question, Mr. Morris. That's a strategic question. And I'm a lawyer, not a strategist. But you think it's useful. I think it shows a pattern of behavior that reasonable people would find disturbing. Whether that's useful depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I thought about Claire's plan. About letting Tyler overextend himself. About waiting for the right moment. If we wanted to make this information public, I said carefully, how would we do that? Legally? You'd need to be careful about privacy laws, defamation, harassment. Illegally? I wouldn't know. But hypothetically, Chen smiled slightly. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to share information about a private citizen's behavior patterns, they might consider whether that person has a public role or responsibility that makes their behavior relevant to community safety. Security professionals, for example, are trusted with access and authority that perhaps warrants greater scrutiny. So if Tyler's employer knew about his personal surveillance activities, hypothetically, they might question whether someone who treats their neighborhood as a monitoring operation should be trusted with company security. I understood what he wasn't saying. There are 3 more drives, Chen said. The contents are yours to do with as you see fit. Mr. Marsh's only instruction was that they be used responsibly and legally. Define responsibly. In a way that prevents future harm while respecting the law and human dignity. He gave me the drives in a sealed envelope. I drove home thinking about responsibility and revenge and whether there was any real difference when someone had hurt the people you loved. Helen and Claire were in the kitchen when I got back. I spread the drives across the table. Marsh left us more evidence, I said. Of what? Claire asked. Everything. Tyler watching his house, Tyler talking to neighbors, Tyler's online activity. It's all documented. Claire picked up one of the drives. How much is there? I don't know. Chen said they're extensive. Did he say we could use them? He said we could do what we thought was responsible. Helen looked at me. What does that mean? It means we have a choice. We can sit on this, let Tyler control the narrative and hope people eventually see through it, or we can show them who he really is. That's not responsibility, Helen said. That's revenge. Maybe, but maybe it's also the only way to make sure Tyler doesn't do this to someone else. Claire was quiet, turning the drive over in her hands. If we use this, Tyler will know it came from us. He'll escalate. Let him. Dad, you don't understand. If he feels cornered, if he thinks we're destroying him, he'll do whatever it takes to protect himself. What can he do? We have documentation. We have witnesses. We have proof. He has 8 years of my life. He knows things about me, about you, about Mom, things that aren't illegal but are embarrassing, private. He'll use them. So we fight dirty too. And become him? I didn't have an answer for that. We sat there in silence. 3 people looking at 4 thumb drives that represented a choice. Stay safe and let Tyler win, or fight back and become something we weren't sure we wanted to be. What would Marsh want us to do? Helen asked finally. Use them, I said. That's why he left them. Or maybe he left them because he wanted us to choose, Claire said. Wanted us to decide what we were willing to become. We're not becoming anything. We're just showing people the truth. No, we're using weapons. There's a difference. She was right. Thought about Claire shaking in our kitchen after confronting Tyler. Thought about 5 years of watching an innocent man be isolated and destroyed by systematic social manipulation. And I decided that some weapons were meant to be used. I'm going to contact Tyler's employer, I said. David, Helen started. They should know that their head of security runs personal surveillance operations on his neighbors. That's a security risk. That's relevant to their business. And then what? Claire asked. Then we let them decide what to do about it. And Tyler will lose his job. Maybe, if they think his behavior warrants termination. And he'll blame us. He already blames us. Claire set down the thumb drive. Okay, do it. But I want to be there when you make the call. I want to hear what you say. Why? Because if we're doing this, if we're using these weapons, I want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. What reasons would be wrong? Revenge, anger, hurt feelings. Those aren't reasons. Those are impulses. What are the right reasons? She thought about it. Protecting other people from what Tyler did to Marsh. Making sure he can't use his job to enable future surveillance. Showing him that manipulation has consequences. Those sound like revenge dressed up in noble language. Maybe, but at least it's noble language. I looked at my daughter and saw someone who'd learned hard lessons about the difference between justice and vengeance. Someone who'd been manipulated into hurting an innocent person and was determined not to let it happen again. Someone who'd become strategic because survival required it. Tomorrow, I said. We make the call tomorrow. That night, I reviewed everything on the drives. Photos, recordings, digital forensics. Marsh had been meticulous. Every interaction documented, every manipulation tracked, every lie cataloged. It was damning. It was also personal, private. The kind of information that, once released, couldn't be taken back. And I had to decide if I was willing to do that. I thought about Marsh at his funeral, thought about the empty chairs and the generic service and the fact that no one had cared enough to mourn him. And I decided that yes, I was willing. Because some people need to face consequences, and Tyler Morrison was one of them. I made the call at 8:30 the next morning before I could change my mind. Used my regular phone this time. No burner, no anonymity. If I was doing this, I was doing it openly. Cortex Security's main line connected me to a receptionist who connected me to human resources who connected me to someone named Victoria Reed in risk management. "How can I help you?" she asked. "I have information about one of your employees, Tyler Morrison, information that relates to his fitness for his security position." A pause. Keyboard sounds. "What kind of information?" "Evidence that Mr. Morrison conducts unauthorized surveillance operations on private citizens, that he maintains files on neighbors, family members, and others without their knowledge or consent, that he uses his professional training to manipulate and isolate people he perceives as threats." Longer pause. "These are serious allegations. Do you have documentation?" "Extensive documentation. Photos, audio recordings, digital forensics, years' worth." "How did you obtain this documentation?" "It was collected by someone Mr. Morrison targeted, someone who's now deceased." "I see. And what's your relationship to Mr. Morrison?" "He's married to my daughter, or was. She left him 2 weeks ago after discovering his surveillance activities." More keyboard sounds. "Can you send me this documentation?" "I can, but I want to be clear about my intent. I'm not trying to get anyone fired. I'm providing information that's relevant to your security practices. What you do with it is your decision." "I appreciate that, Mr. Morris, David Morris." "Mr. Morris, I'll need you to send everything to a secure email address. We'll review it and contact you if we need additional information." She gave me the email. I spent the next 2 hours uploading files, organizing them by category, adding context where needed. Sent the whole package with a cover letter explaining who I was, why I had this information, and what I thought Cortex should know about their head of security. Then I waited. Helen found me in the kitchen at noon, staring at my phone like it might explode. "Did you do it?" "I did it." "How do you feel?" "Scared." "Good. You should be." Claire came downstairs a few minutes later. "Tyler called 9 times, left 3 voicemails." "What did they say?" "I didn't listen, but I'm guessing he knows." "He can't know yet. Cortex needs time to review everything. He doesn't need to know what we did. He just needs to know we did something. He can feel it." She was right. People like Tyler developed instincts for when situations shifted against them. They sensed changes in control, in power dynamics, in threat landscapes. "What do we do?" Helen asked. "We wait," I said. "We stay here. We don't engage. We let Cortex do their investigation." "And if Tyler shows up?" "Then we call the police." "For what? He hasn't broken any laws." "For trespassing. For harassment. For whatever gets him away from us." The afternoon crawled by. Tyler called 4 more times, sent texts that progressed from confused to angry to pleading to threatening. "I know you did something. Whatever you told people, it's lies. I love you. Come home so we can talk about this. If you've damaged my career, I will destroy you." Claire showed me each message, her hand steady now. "He's spiraling." "Good." "Is it?" Cornered people do desperate things. Let him be desperate. But I was worried too. Tyler had spent years maintaining perfect control. Now that control was slipping, and I didn't know how he'd react when it broke completely. At 4 p.m., my phone rang. Victoria Reed from Cortex. "Mr. Morris, I've reviewed the materials you sent. Can you verify their authenticity?" "I can't personally verify them since I didn't create them, but they came from Daniel Marsh's attorney, from materials Mr. Marsh left in his safety deposit box. The attorney confirmed they're genuine." "And Mr. Marsh is deceased?" "Yes. He died 3 weeks ago. I see. We'll need to conduct our own investigation. But based on what you've sent, we have significant concerns about Mr. Morrison's judgment and conduct. What does that mean? It means Mr. Morrison has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. He won't have access to our facilities or systems until we complete our review. My heart was hammering. How long will that take? Typically 2 to 4 weeks. We'll need to interview colleagues, review his work files, verify the information you provided. This isn't a quick process. He's going to know I'm involved. Probably. We can't disclose the source of our concerns, but Mr. Morrison is intelligent enough to make connections. I understand. Mr. Morris, be careful. If Mr. Morrison has engaged in the kind of surveillance and manipulation you've documented, he's not someone who accepts consequences gracefully. I know. She hung up. I sat there for a long moment, phone in hand, thinking about what I'd just set in motion. Helen was watching me from the doorway. Well, Tyler's on administrative leave, pending investigation. Oh, God. They're taking it seriously. They're going to investigate everything. And Tyler? He's going to lose his mind. Claire appeared beside Helen. When will he find out? Probably already has. They would have called him first. As if on cue, my phone rang again. Tyler. I declined the call. He called back immediately. Declined. Called again. I turned off the phone. He's coming, Claire said flatly. We'll be ready. Will we? Dad, you don't understand. His entire identity is wrapped up in that job, in being a security professional, in being the person who knows things and controls situations. You just took that away from him. He took it away from himself. He won't see it that way. She was right. We spent the next hour preparing. Doors locked, phones ready to call 911, lights on even though it was still afternoon, creating the appearance of vigilance because vigilance was all we had. Tyler's car pulled into our driveway at 5:15. He didn't park, just stopped in the middle of the driveway, engine running, sitting there like he was deciding something. Stay inside, I told Helen and Claire. Where are you going? To talk to him. David? If I don't go out there, he'll come in here. At least outside we have witnesses. I walked out before Helen could argue, crossed the lawn to Tyler's car. He rolled down the window. You destroyed my career, he said. Voice flat, controlled. I sent documentation to your employer. What they do with it is their decision. Bullshit. You knew exactly what you were doing. You're right. I knew. Why? What did I ever do to you? You isolated an innocent man. You manipulated my daughter. You treated everyone around you like surveillance targets. I protected you. I protected this neighborhood. I identified a threat and I neutralized it. You don't know that. You believe his letter, his carefully constructed narrative, but you don't actually know who he was or what he was capable of. I know he died alone because of you. Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I did my job. Your job is corporate security, not neighborhood manipulation. My job is identifying and mitigating threats. Marsh was a threat. The gaps in his background, the operational security training, the deliberate isolation, all of that suggested someone hiding something. That's not suspicious, that's survival. Or it's what a dangerous person wants you to believe. We stared at each other through the car window. Two men with completely different realities, completely different truths, trying to communicate across a gulf of perception. Cortec will investigate, Tyler said finally. They'll find nothing wrong because there was nothing wrong. And when they reinstate me, I'm going to come after you, illegally, for defamation, for tortious interference, for everything I can make stick. Go ahead. You think you've won. You think you've exposed me as some kind of villain, but all you've done is prove you're willing to believe lies over facts. The only liar here is you. Tyler put the car in reverse. Stay away from my wife. She's not your wife anymore. The paperwork says otherwise. He backed out of the driveway and drove away. Slow, controlled, making a point about his composure. But I'd seen his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Inside, Claire and Helen were waiting by the window. What did he say? Helen asked. That he did nothing wrong? That Cortec will reinstate him? That he's going to sue us? Will they reinstate him? I don't know. What if they do? Claire asked. What if they investigate and decide the documentation isn't enough? That Tyler's personal life doesn't affect his professional capability? Then we tried. That's all we can do. But I was thinking about what Victoria Reed had said, about Tyler not accepting consequences, about being careful, about what desperate people do when they have nothing left to lose. We should increase security, I said. Helen looked at me like I was crazy. Increase security? Against what? Against whatever Tyler might do if he decides we're the reason his life is falling apart. We are the reason his life is falling apart. Then we should probably make sure he can't retaliate. That night, I installed additional locks on the doors, checked all the windows, made sure the outdoor lights were working, created patterns that would make it obvious if someone was watching the house. I was becoming Tyler. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire noticed. You're doing what he did. Surveillance, security theater, treating people like threats. I'm being careful. That's what he said. It's different. Is it? I didn't have a good answer. The next week passed in strange, suspended animation. Tyler didn't come back, didn't call, didn't text, just vanished into whatever personal crisis administrative leave creates. Cortec called twice, asked follow-up questions, requested permission to interview us. We agreed, went to their offices, spent 3 hours explaining everything. Victoria Reed took notes, asked good questions, never indicated what she was thinking. We appreciate your cooperation, she said at the end. We'll complete our investigation within the next 2 weeks. What happens to Tyler during that time? He remains on leave. He doesn't have access to company resources or information. He's essentially in limbo. And after? That depends on what we find. We drove home in silence. Claire looked exhausted. I thought this would feel better, she said. Taking action, fighting back, but it just feels empty. Consequences aren't supposed to feel good, Helen said. They're just supposed to be necessary. Are they necessary? Yes. But I heard the uncertainty in Helen's voice. The question she wasn't asking, had we done the right thing, or had we just become the kind of people who destroyed others because we had the power to do it? 2 days later, things escalated. I was at the hardware store when Mark Peterson pulled me aside. Tyler came by my house, he said. When? Yesterday. Asked if I'd noticed anything strange about your behavior. Said you'd been spreading lies about him. Asked if I'd be willing to sign a statement supporting his defamation case. What did you tell him? That I don't get involved in family disputes. But David, he was off. Not himself. Kept talking about loyalty and betrayal and how he'd trusted the wrong people. Did he threaten you? Not directly, but there was something in the way he said it, like he was warning me about choosing sides. I thanked Mark and left. Called Claire on the way home. Tyler's going to Neighbors, trying to build support for a defamation case. Will it work? Depends on whether people believe him or us. And if they believe him, then we deal with that too. But I was starting to understand the trap we'd built. By exposing Tyler, we'd forced him into a position where his only option was counterattack. And counterattack meant turning the neighborhood against us the same way he'd turned it against Marsh. We'd created another fence, this one with us on the wrong side.